back to the Football Fun Factory podcast, and what a momentous day is, a real milestone of our short journey today. It's episode 10 and we can't wait to discuss another hot topic in today's episode. And it's a biggie of a subject, as I'll be asking the guys if the football industry is broken. It can't be, can it? We all love it. The top players and coaches are earning millions and millions of pounds. We've got more access than ever before of watching the top games on a more or less daily basis. Surely the game has never been stronger. But when you look into the world of coaching, is there realistically any chance of ever fulfilling your passion and working in the game full time? With so few opportunities available, how can you stand out from the crowd and get an opportunity unless you've got every qualification going? But to do that, it's certainly going to cost a pretty penny. And if you are one of the lucky ones that gets into a full-time role, is it really sustainable with the hours and demands expected of you? Or is there plenty of opportunity out there for people to work in the game, and it's just about being patient, and when the opportunity comes, it will be all you ever dreamed of? James, you worked full-time in football for a number of years. What's it like?
Yeah, full of mixed emotions, really, when I look back at my time. Absolutely loved it. Really, really enjoyed the opportunities that were opened up. To work full-time in the game that you love, I think that very few people get the chance to do that, so I feel incredibly fortunate. There were certainly some challenges along the way. I'm sure we'll tackle those subjects as we get into this podcast, but yeah, I loved it. And I think, Johnny, you'll have mixed feelings a bit like me.
Yeah, my only real experience of working life was in professional football until the Football Fun Factory. I had a little stint at Argos on a Sunday, upstairs picking all the different toys and stuff.
I've always wondered what goes on up there when
you don't want to know, Luke. But I think in general, yeah, my football has only ever been my sort of only ever job. And like you said, there's some unbelievable highs, but a lot of challenges as well. And looking forward to discussing them on the podcast.
Okay, enough of the small talk then. Let's put this subject on trial. Welcome back to Chaddy's Court. Court is now in session. I am dressed in my ridiculous judge's outfit and we're ready to put this subject on trial. James, Johnny, I've got two contrasting views. If you'd like to open them up, give them a read and I will invite you to read them out loud. We'll start with you, James.
The football coaching industry is full of opportunity. Not only can coaches do something they love for a living, they can earn incredible sums of money in the process.
Brilliant. Johnny?
The football coaching industry is in ruins. Coaches are overworked, underpaid, and massively undervalued. Something has to change.
Interesting. James, I'm going to ask you to take the stand first and give us your opening statement.
No problem. So, the football coaching industry opens up incredible opportunities. We've all benefited from those. Collectively, within the world of football coaching, there's probably about coming up for 17, 18 years experience sat around the table here. So this, for me, is a living, breathing example of why collectively we've spent 18 years of our lives within the football coaching industry. If there isn't loads of opportunity, if there isn't loads of wonderful experiences, why on earth would we all do that? And we would be hypocrites to sit here and say that there's any sorts of problems with the football coaching industry.
I've got a question, but I think you'd probably ask it anyway, John.
No, go on.
I was going to ask, why are we now sat here then?
Because there was too much opportunity. Good question. Why are we sat here? Because the football coaching industry is full of opportunity, both within the professional game and also at places like the Football Fun Factory. So whilst we were there at a professional club for a while, all decided to exit that experience, but we are still within the football coaching industry. Therefore, clearly demonstrates my point that it's full of opportunity, whether that be at a pro club or indeed the FFF.
Johnny, over to you for questioning.
Cool. So my question is, obviously, beyond the franchise at the Football Fun Factory and the business opportunity that we've sort of created, sort of want to separate that from the statement that you've said. Obviously, how many actual full-time jobs are there in the football coaching industry?
Hundreds. Thousands.
Compared to the amount of people, do you think it's a fair relation?
Yeah, lots of people want to be involved in football coaching, and but it's a bit like playing the game, isn't it? Lots of children want to grow up and become a professional footballer. The thing is, you have to be very good, but if you are good enough, then you can open up lots of opportunities. And we've got Premier League managers that are earning millions of pounds a year. So it just goes to show that there's loads of opportunity.
That doesn't mean there's loads of opportunity.
It does.
That means there's very few opportunity.
Have you got any further questions, Johnny, for James?
I think he's at a bit of a loss to think of anything that could possibly contradict my statement.
How many clubs are there in the Football League?
92. Is that right?
I think you're right.
Yeah, thank you. I get a point for that. Yeah. Am I the winner?
And roughly each of those clubs, how many jobs are there?
I would have to do a very thorough study to come back on.
From your experience, obviously working at a professional football club
from my
for a number of
experience,
years.
there would be a few, probably about 10 different jobs within the academy.
Full time?
Many of them full-time opportunities. There would, I think 10's about reasonable. I think if you go across foundation phase, professional phase, youth development phase, sports scientists, all those kind of things, psychology, academy psychologists, the opportunities are endless. And then you've got also quite a lot of clubs then have a charitable arm or some sort of development system that sits beneath that. So there's a plethora of jobs.
Would they be full-time jobs or just...
Many of them are full-time jobs, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Any further questions, Johnny?
No, I think you've valiantly tried to argue the corner. However,
Thank you.
I think I'd like to take the stand.
Thank you very much.
prove
I
you
think
wrong.
I'll make the decision of when you'll take the stand. It's not Johnny's call, is it?
Not yet.
No, well, I hope you will take
I think what
over
John's
one.
saying is he's out of questions. He realises that he's not going to win this week.
Don't be so sure. Go on then, John, take the stand.
Cool. So having worked, I can only talk through my own experiences, having worked in sort of professional football, worked in the football coaching industry for a number of years. I can openly say that I was overworked. I felt undervalued and underpaid massively during my time, and something had to change, and I can only speak from my personal experiences, and I thoroughly stand by this statement.
Passionate. Questions?
Johnny, the sample size of how many people feel that way about it is just you, just one. Obviously, there's lots of opportunity, as my statement suggests, in football. So it's really only your own experiences that you're drawing on. So if you look at that as a piece of evidence as such, just a very, very small sample size.
Okay, so I'll extend the question to Sir Luke.
Is it possible to put the judge on the stand? I'm not sure if that's possible.
James, I don't know. I'm getting belittled here from both sides. Fine, ask me a question.
During your
Overall. I wanted to do that all week. Last 9 weeks.
It took us 10 episodes to get that in.
During your time working in professional football, did you find that you were overworked?
Yeah, after a period of time, yes, definitely.
Case closed.
Sample size of 2.
James,
during your time at a professional football club, did you say you were...
No. If anything, I had too much free time.
You're not allowed to lie.
I had a fantastic work-life balance.
have you got any further questions for Johnny for us to sum up?
No, I've got more. So, John, why did you feel undervalued?
Because I was overworked and underpaid.
Okay, just how you feel. I think there's lots more coaches out there who may have a very different view.
I think during my time at professional football club, I saw a lot of people in the industry share their thoughts, share their values. A lot of people that have left the industry, some really talented coaches that have left full-time jobs because of the poor work-life balance, the poor pay that they received.
And how many clubs did you work for, John? Amongst your,
I worked
a long time.
I worked at one club,
Just the one.
But obviously during my time, when I talk about the people that I've interacted with, I'm talking about from all other clubs across the country and
all
courses.
Other clubs.
Yeah. There's examples of...
I'm going to wrap this up now. It's getting a little bit feisty. I'm not saying I wasn't thinking about letting it go. I was quite enjoying it, but I'm going to sum up now. You made a good argument, James.
Thank you.
So did yourself, Johnny. I think I'm going to make the decision to declare Johnny the winner because in my eyes there isn't enough opportunity. There isn't enough full-time opportunity. I do think that the work-life balance isn't there. I do think you're undervalued within the majority of roles within football clubs. So, Johnny, you're my favourite. Interesting argument, guys. Both made your points really well. James, I'm going to come to you first on this one because you were sort of arguing against the point of, is the football industry broken? What are your true feelings on it?
My true feelings are that it is fundamentally broken. It's a shambles. I think there's loads of coaches out there that are incredibly talented, that should have a career in the game. They've got so much to offer young children, and there should be loads of opportunities for them to progress and develop and make sure that there's a viable career path for them. But unfortunately, people fall out of the game much in the same way that children fall out of the game when they kind of stop enjoying it. I think that coaches do exactly the same, and we are three living, breathing examples of people that were good, I think, at their jobs and good at what they did within a professional football club environment, but unfortunately have come out of that environment for many, many reasons.
What do you think it is with regards to like the industry itself? Obviously, like we both worked, or all of us have worked at a professional football club, and some really, really talented people that have then sort of gone by the wayside or left because they weren't enjoying it. Like, what do you think it is? What is the reason behind it?
Many reasons. So I just think it's not sustainable. So that kind of wraps out all of the reasons up into one. So I think everyone joins. You had a bit of a different journey, I guess, because most people join. Not saying you weren't young, but we were very young, weren't we? So you were 17 when you started.
Yeah.
I was 19 when I started. Went on this journey, and I was heading towards a point of unsustainability, which was the fact that the career progression, the salary progression just wasn't there. The opportunities weren't necessarily there. Although, don't get me wrong, we got opportunities to go into the next role. The big thing for me is that football is all about one thing. And quite rightly, in some ways, the football is all about the first team on the pitch on the Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock have to get 3 points. And that means that all of the resources are ploughed into that. The football clubs want to apply as much resource as possible to that. It means that there isn't resource to look after people particularly well within the football club. So that's how you fix that, I'm not too sure. It takes a brave decision to deploy the resources in a different way. I'm sure the fans wouldn't be too happy if it was deployed differently because they want to sign the new striker to win a match at the weekend.
But is that the sort of the full circle of it? There's not an issue with talented people leaving roles because there is then so many others wanting to get into them because 100%. The supply and demand is so outweighed.
There are people that are willing, as I was at the start of my journey, because you dream of being a professional footballer, realise you're not good enough, you dream then the next best thing is you work in football full time. And at the start, you're driving here, there and everywhere saying yes to losing money, almost getting to a session, like you tell the story before, but you travel to Thetford, an hour and a half from my house for 15, 20 quid. I'd say yes because wanted to impress, wanted to get more and more opportunity, but then ultimately I'm losing money. But you do it at 17, 18, 19 because you can, like staying at home and everything else, don't have a mortgage, don't have kids, don't have a family, can get away with it. Then obviously, like I say, as you get on later in life, it becomes unsustainable.
You've hit the nail on the head. So what happens is, and this is generally speaking, this is what happens. People come into football coaching or sports coaching at a young age, they have a huge amount of passion for it, quite often because they wanted to be a player and it's so hard to be a player, and therefore then you go into it and the next best thing is coaching. You do the coaching, you get asked to go here, there and everywhere. You say yes repeatedly, on repeat. You put yourself last and the organisation you work for first, but then over time you get older and your life changes. You then need to rent, buy a house or whatever it might be. You might then have a relationship outside of the game, and actually those things suffer, and you might then get married and have kids. And it's no surprise that at the point at which I was turning 30, getting married, and having a
15 years
baby.
ago now.
I know. And having a baby is at no surprise that's the point at which I left the industry of football coaching.
But then what if, like, obviously you spoke a lot about not enjoying it, the hours and that sort of thing, but the financial side of it sounds like the biggest part of it, in terms of you don't get out what you put into it. If you were receiving a salary that matched the work that you're putting in, would that have changed? Would you still be sat here today, do you think, if you was in an industry that you loved, or was there something that you went into it and you loved it, but by the time you come out of it, you didn't love it for a multitude of reasons, or purely for the salary that you were getting for doing that job?
No, I don't think that would paper over the cracks, to be honest. I think there were so many reasons, and they just all kind of counteract with one another. I think there's a bit of a culture of people trying to get the next job, and because there's so few jobs there, it's kind of a bit of a backstabbing environment for people. And like we said, small sample size. That was a genuine comment at the start. Kind of, it is a small sample size. We did all work for one football club, but as you quite rightly said, Johnny, you've been on coaching courses and sat in a room with 30 other people from 30 other football clubs, and they all say the same thing. It's just people are kind of in this little bubble, really, and unfortunately, the bubble's kind of burst in terms of how then the industry works. It just doesn't work, does it? It's not sustainable, and there's very few people that stay in it for a very long time.
Yeah, I think there are examples. Look, once again, just to caveat everything we're saying, like, there are examples, and I've seen firsthand some people that have gone on to have, like, really successful careers that they really enjoy. It works for them and their work-life balance. It works for them in their sort of situation where they are in their life, or the stuff that sits outside of work. But I think more so from my experience, I've seen so many people work at a professional football club, not enjoy it, or have reasons, as we've sort of touched on a few of them, which sees them then come away. And actually there's so many talented and so many good people in that environment that then aren't able to have a sustained career of 10, 15, 20 years within football, because the industry itself is that vicious cycle of money goes back into the first team, doesn't get sort of re-put into the staff, and then everyone has to punch above their weight to try and do more and get the next bit. It's sort of just that, like I said, that vicious circle that's professional football.
I think that's the saddest thing, isn't it? Because I'm sure, I know you were the same, I was the same, when you get into it and you think, this is utopia, you've made it, Brilliant. You've got a job in professional football, then the disenchantment of understanding what it was really like, you have that honeymoon period and then realise this isn't what I was really expecting it to be. It wasn't the dream job that I wanted. Obviously, there's some wonderful parts of it, working with really talented people, talented young children that play the game, but it just turns into something that you don't enjoy. And I think that's when the game is broken, because when you're not giving your all, or at your best self doing something that's affecting other people, particularly young people that you're in charge of, I think that's when football does become broken. Yeah,
100%. And I think that's probably where I got to in my journey, is I wasn't enjoying it as much, and probably came away from the person I was when I first started, which then negatively affected the children that I was coaching. Hopefully not too much, and hopefully they still enjoyed their time with me and during my sessions and everything, but I definitely wasn't the best version of myself. And that ultimately was one of the reasons why I left. Like, if I wasn't enjoying it, I wasn't progressing how I wanted to as a person, and actually saw myself becoming a person I didn't want to become, and that was a key reason for me to leave.
What was when obviously it come to a point where it was unsustainable for you? Obviously, what was happening at home, family, everything like that, you had to step away. Did that all come, and that you just thought, today's the day, I need to stop what I'm doing? Or was it accumulation of a number of years, a number of months? How was that for you, stepping away from the industry?
Probably just a bit of a realisation of the bigger, wider world, really. Like you, it was my only real career. Went off to coach in America, came back, started coaching at Cambridge United, and that was my career from 19 years old, aside from my job, which was at Focus DIY and Gardening.
Nice.
It wasn't at Argos, but got a job at Focus. Then earned a few quid out there to go out to America, started coaching, came back and started working with Cambridge. That's all I knew. And when you've been in something from such a young age, you're almost like indoctrinated, like you just love it. And I did love it. And I don't want to sit here and make it sound like it was a terrible job. I absolutely loved it. And it was almost like that's why you allowed the kind of the low pay, and that's why you allowed for finishing on the AstroTurf at 9 o'clock at night, freezing cold temperatures an hour from where you live, because you just still loved it despite all those things, because you're coaching 100%. Football, you see that child that then gets a scholarship and runs out and plays for the first team at the weekend. Magical. But actually, when you then open your eyes up to the bigger, wider world and you see some of your friends and you're 27, 28, 29 and they're going off and doing things and opening up career opportunities, then you realise that the career aspect of football, unfortunately, isn't really there. I guess there are examples of how it can be there if you want to then go and be the youth team manager, the first team manager and whatnot, and you can. There's obviously a really lucrative career in football coaching for a few, but it's not just the few that make it to those levels of coaching, but it's also the ones that want to go in that direction, because my passion was slightly different to yours at the time, which was actually is all about the participation programs and mass participation and those kind of things. You were working within the academy, and even in those routes, really, it was almost like, unless you wanted to go and then go on that journey I've just described, that was great. For me, I ended up going down a commercial route of the club, and I was almost like sucked into that as a way to kind of generate opportunities for myself. And then it was that at that point that I realised that I completely moved away from my passion.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the industry, the actual football coaching element of it, is just not well paid enough to keep people for long enough to have a sustainable career in the game.
John, I think with you, obviously it's different to James, as he alluded to there, but sort of your ambition probably was, obviously working with young players, probably not a first team manager was never your goal, but you got probably quite near to where you wanted to get to very early in your journey, but still decided it wasn't the right path for you.
Yeah, I think that's where you mention like the natural progression for coaches is you start within the foundation phase, you then go to youth development, then it's the youth team, you get around that. And I was really lucky that during my time at Cambridge United, they tried to facilitate my ambition and they tried to get me around. Like I was obviously working with you on day release and those types of things. And Mark Bonner, who was academy manager at the time, was always encouraging me and like had an open door if I ever wanted to go and support with the youth team and get around it. So I was really blessed. However, that wasn't really where my passion was and my skill set was. Like, for anyone that's seen me coach, I'd like to think myself as my strength working with those younger age groups, and actually then my opportunities for progression within the industry were almost like, because the industry standard was to go into the youth team and to then first teams, it was like, well, if you're really good with the younger ones, it's like, well, unlucky. Like, if you want to progress, you've got to do this. And almost would pigeonhole me into roles where actually it probably wasn't my skill set or my passion or my ambitions to grow within the club. And then you look at other clubs to see what they're doing. I actually think Cambridge was, considering the size of the club compared to other first teams, pretty well paid. Like if you compare them to other academies and everything else, especially for the stature they were at. However, it's like you look around at other jobs and you go, well, I can get a little bit more money if I go there, and there's a little bit, maybe a few more opportunities to progress there, but not really. Do I want to travel then an hour and a half every day to get to the office? So for me, I think it was probably a lack of opportunity and progression that I saw in the future of where I wanted to get to.
And do you think that was a reason that you mentioned earlier about sort of not being, towards your end of your time at the club, you weren't the same coach as you were when you began with? Was it that frustration of maybe not being able to progress that led to that, or an accumulation of things?
I think it's probably accumulation of things. I think that definitely was a factor for me. Like anyone that knows me, I'm mega ambitious, want to try and always do more and on to the next bit and everything else, and that was definitely capped in the football coaching industry. You are at the mercy of other people and their sort of progression and where they want to go, and if they're happy in a role, then that doesn't open up, then they can't just create new jobs, or there aren't loads of jobs or lines for you to go into. So it was a little bit like sat on my hands at times, where I really wanted to, I guess, better myself and progress. But then I think there was, similar to what you flagged earlier, James, like you do start to see other people in your life like go on and start families and progress in different ways, and Saturday, Sunday mornings, getting up and going away to. Oh, it's great the first few times you go, especially when you're away at Man City, which is absolutely class. But actually, it's a long way to go. It takes your whole weekend off the cards to do anything sort of social as well. So I think for me, it was a number of different things. I think probably the lack of opportunity and progression that we raised earlier on in Chaddy's court was definitely one thing. And then two, probably where I wanted to be in my life, both personally and professionally.
I think it's worth just touching on, obviously we've got really good understanding of being within that professional club environment and the kind of pay scale that obviously not necessarily talking about the full-time roles here, but just like what an academy coach position looks like, because there might be some people sitting there watching it thinking that academy coaches are paid 15 grand a year to do some part-time coaching alongside their employment and whatnot. John, it's probably worth, obviously you'll know kind of what it was where we were, but obviously you've spoken to people from other clubs and know that actually, like you said, it was actually quite well paid. Mm-hmm. Just give us a bit of an understanding of...
Yeah, for a part-time coach that would essentially have an academy age group, it can vary massively from club to club, but this is obviously a few years ago, but you're typically looking around £5,000 a year for what would then be 2, maybe 3 evenings and a Saturday and Sunday morning. And there are quite long sessions, obviously. You're there for... Well, you always get there at least half an hour before, at least, to set up, greet the children. You're then always at least half an hour after either packing up or facilitating, obviously, the children going. And then it is Saturdays, Sundays, and it can be home or it can be away, and it can be, like I mentioned earlier on, Man City, which from where I was living at the time is a long old way to go, and that does take up your 7 o'clock start. You get into the minibus to then drive you up, and you're not getting home till 7 in the evening. So it's a huge commitment for 35 weeks of the year, probably more than 40 weeks of the year, where you're then probably not getting paid anywhere near what you should be.
I think on that, with particularly the part-time coaches, it's a love for the, like, you wouldn't do it, would you? There's so
100%.
much passion, there's so much fantastic people that do it, and I think that is all around. I think in terms of the full-time opportunities is where you do feel like for many people there's a shelf life to it because of the hours, the commitment that's expected of you to do.
But then there's a shelf life on both, isn't there? Because there's a shelf life on the lack of career opportunity, progression, salary progression within full-time roles. But then there's a shelf life on having the level of passion to be able to get up on a Sunday, tell your wife and kids that I'm out for 12 hours, got to drive the minibus to Man City. Like, it's like there's only so long you can do that for.
Yeah, what I recognised
many reasons
in the game that the part-time coaches tended to
stick at it for
long because I think they had turned into more. It was more of a passion project for them because it wasn't about, you weren't employed full-time by the club. You weren't in the office all day, then going to sessions at night. It was just something that you absolutely loved and probably carried on loving because you weren't exposed to everything else within the club at the same time. But
I think what you raised earlier on, James, I think is ultimately the biggest challenge, isn't it? Football clubs, they have to, on the face of it, put money into the first team. That is where the money has to go. That is what drives the club forward as a whole. Obviously, there's a risk associated with that. Big transfers that you might not get right. There might be wages that you might not get right. And as we all know in football, it very rarely happens as everyone sort of wishes it to, and only one team can win the league at the end of the year. So the money generated by the club, by the youth development system, by anything, ultimately gets driven back into the first team, especially in smaller clubs. And that's when they then hope that the first team go on to win the league, secure more funds from elsewhere. But those smaller clubs then obviously have loads of people working really hard in the academy, and it can be thankless if the first team on the weekend don't go and win and don't get promoted. That's what it comes down to.
Okay, let's start rounding up. James, give me a little overview of whether you think the football industry is broken.
So it's fundamentally broken, unfortunately, and it's really sad that so many passionate football coaches are exiting the game. I think that there are huge missed opportunities for football clubs, although they won't see it as a missed opportunity because there's another 100 people that come and do the job that somebody's leaving from. So I think it's just a shame. It's just a massive shame, and I think that's one reason why we created the Football Fun Factory franchise in the way that we did, so that there's a legitimate career in football where you can earn a good living, progress your wage, and do something you love for a living, and kind of not have to do all the not so nice bits in terms of travel and time commitments as well.
Johnny?
Yeah, really conscious that I don't want to come across as sort of like moaning about the industry and working full-time in football, because I know there's so many people probably listening to this podcast and that follow what we do at the Football Fun Factory and would bite someone's arm off to work full-time in football. And there are so many great bits about working full-time in football, and I've got some fantastic memories and definitely don't regret sort of my time in professional football. However, having said that, there's no way that I could still be doing it now or have worked at a professional football club for a number of years, and I know that is the case for a lot of other talented people. So unfortunately, the nature of the beast is a little bit broken at the moment. I don't quite know if there's any obvious sort of changes to that, but having said that, I know there are so many people that would quit their job tomorrow to go and work full-time in football and have that life and those opportunities that it presents. So I think it will be right for some people. Unfortunately, it wasn't right for me and what I wanted and needed.
Yeah, I think in my mind, I think the world of football coaching is broken until coaching is recognised as a more serious profession in what it is, and the pay scales, the work-life balance, etc. that comes with that is taken a lot more seriously. But at this moment in time, I think the game's broken. Not a very nice way to end the chat. I'm sure it will get better. Anyway, let's have a few listeners' questions. Okay, we've got a couple of listeners' questions this week. The first one, I want to ask to both of you. It's a very tricky question. Favourite podcast episode so far?
Favourite one? I think it's what makes a great coach, just because it's what we're all about. It's what we love talking about. We've just done a podcast that's probably a little bit demoralising, talking about how there's not too many opportunities for football coaches and how the industry's a bit broken. But I think talking about the positive impact that football coaching can have on a young child's life, that was my favourite one, talking about the kind of key skills and characteristics that coaches need to create a brilliant environment for kids.
Fantastic. Johnny, you got a favourite?
Couldn't pick one because I love them all. I think I'm looking forward to ones that we're going to film again in the future. Well, we've got some big plans for the podcast where we're going to take it, other interesting topics that we're going to have. So the next one's my favourite.
Oh, what a good answer. My favourite, carrot and the stick. Been really enjoyed your two. And last question for today. Where will the FFF be launching in 2024?
Where? Well, we're just about to onboard a new group of superstar head coaches. I think that I'm going to twist the question a little bit to where we'd like to launch, just because there's some key areas of the country. So for people that don't know, Children's Football Coaching Organisation want to make football fun for everyone and want to create opportunities so that whoever lands on our website can type in their postcode and there will be a Football Fun Factory session near them.
That's the goal.
That is the goal. And we want to make sure that we are accessible to everyone. At the moment, we're not in Sheffield, Newcastle, Southampton, Bournemouth, a few other areas. Derby,
Leeds.
Nottingham. There's some big cities and towns and places where we're not yet. And we get a lot of messages into the Facebook page and things like that, and emails in saying, when are you opening up here? And it's frustrating, to be honest. And the route to that is finding suitable football coaches to come in and take on our franchise opportunity. So we'll be launching in loads of new locations because lots of new head coaches coming on board. But hopefully some of those that I've just listed will be ones that we can look forward to later on this year.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. Great chat. And thank you for listening.